Dr. Allison Wiltz, and you're here with Arturo Dominguez. We're here representing ourselves, but also our wonderful publications that we have here on Substack. I have a newsletter for Black women, but I'm more known for my work on Medium, where I've written over 1,000 essays on race, women, and injustices, historical and contemporary. Um, and Arturo, he'll tell you all about his publications, but here's the orgs that I'm associated with. So I help found Writers and Editors of Color, which is an organization. You can look up our website under the same name. And that's where me and Arturo began to connect. I'm also the editor in chief of my own publication, Culture. You can find us at readculture.com, and we're a publication for activists. I'm also an editor at Momentum magazine, and that is a Medium owned publication. And we feature stories primarily on anti Black racism in particular. And I also have editing responsibilities at Afro-Sapiophile, which is a publication on Medium for Black intelligent thought. And editor chief over there, Johnny Silvercloud, is really the lead on that publication. And hopefully, I'm not leaving anybody else out. So, there is my introduction. I have a PhD in psychology, but as you know, I'm most known for talking about race. So, here we go, Arturo. Tell them about you.
Well, I have the decolonized journalism publication on here. I also run the Antagonist mag here online or on the web and on Medium. I've been publishing a lot of the same publications you have. I've been doing a lot of journalism work for the last 10 years or so. Been published. I do a lot of investigative work for Unicorn Riot, and a few other places. And I've been featured in Latino Rebels. All that works in the Library of Congress. A lot of stuff that I'm, pretty proud of. Like, when you got published in Oprah Daily, uh, you know, these are all things that I attribute to being part of the Writers and Editors of Color collective that we've all had successes in. And I think it's pretty cool. I really do.
Absolutely. I credit my success too with working with y'all. Remember, that was one of the main things when I first started on Medium, I just wanted to get published in Momentum. And now I'm the editor, you know. So
Right.
it really did start from us just raising our voices and saying, you know what, Black people and people of color on this platform do not have the visibility that we felt like we deserve. So it was nice that we did that. But today
Yeah.
um, we definitely want to talk about what are some action items and what are some of the problems that we're facing right now. There's a lot going on with the Latino and Black community. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's and we had this discussion a couple weeks ago about how all of this federal overreach and blurring the lines between federal and state powers is impacting not just the Latino community, right? It's
Right.
impacting the Black community more than any other community. So you look at what's been happening in DC the last few days, and it just couldn't be any more evident. They're talking about sending feds into other quote unquote Democrat run cities, where in all those cities the crime has been dropping, because of the leadership, because of things they've done. And it's just like DC, they were saying it's something like the violent crimes at a 30-year low. And Donald Trump says, "Oh no, it's violent crime," so
Right.
people just buy it. And it's I mean, they're manufacturing stuff to validate their lies from the election, from the campaign trail. That's where all this association with gangs and Latinos and then targeting Black people and all this stuff is coming from. But um, just the aggressiveness and how they're just targeting our communities like that, and even poor white people, like the poor white folks on the street, the homeless people, right? They're getting scooped up. I mean, so it's like they're really coming after like every marginalized community you could think of. And with the feds and what we're seeing on the street, it's just violent, So yeah, I think this is going to be an important conversation, because there's a lot of us, right, in the Writers and Editors of Color collective. And I think that because of Substack and this dynamic where there's a lot of shifting going on, where people were disgruntled with Medium, came here. So like our group got a little fragmented. And I think what we're doing now is finding a way to bring us all back together, here on Substack, because Substack has so many tools. Um, and they're really beneficial. So I think that's where this conversation is going. We got like you mentioned, we have Marlon Weems. Everybody loves Marlon on here. We got,
Yeah.
Brian Gilmore, Quintessa. I mean, there's so many of us here. Um, and I think that we right now in this moment, if all of us came together like we did several years ago, I think we can
Right.
probably make a difference. I think we can
I
make a difference.
agree. I definitely agree. I feel like there is more desire to for independent media and independent voices on what's going on. I know for one, I used to watch the news a lot, but the past couple of years I haven't. It's been really hard to stomach some of the way that they frame some of the stories. Um,
Right.
what's happening right now with Trump is fascism, and I feel like people have to be really clear about what's happening so that we can possibly fight it off. I feel like there's too many people that are in denial and they're just engaging in niceties about it when in reality he's threatening everything. I'd also say that for those people that were kind of misled and said that we're trying to tell other Black people that what happens to immigrants doesn't matter, and that it's irrelevant, that this is not their fight. Like, I just wanted to really say on the record that that aged very poorly, because obviously now we see in DC, there's an all out attack, not just with police, because I think when I shared some of those videos on Twitter, some people were kind of condescending in that, well, this always happens to Black people. But I think people have to really be careful about doing that because we need to acknowledge that this is an escalation. So the status quo in America is that Black people are already three times as likely as white people to be killed by the police. So ultimately, now that we're in a system where more and different types of law enforcement agencies are on the street and approaching and encountering Black people and people of color, that's going to increase the rate of violence. And we're coming off of 2024, and if you look at the last policing report, the police actually broke another record for killing people in the United States. So ever since we protested in 2020, the violence from the police has actually elevated, but the public is kind of grown weary of talking about the situation. And so it's very troubling because just when things are getting worse, like for society. And then also what's happening in Washington is a warning for things to come. We know that Donald Trump is planning on going after other cities that have Black mayors. And I do think that when it comes to woke, me and Arturo were talking about before we started, we wanted to do like a woke space where woke writers would come at the beginning of next week and talk about how they feel about this issue and what do they see in their community. And what are some things that maybe we can do as Black people and people of color to resist this? Because ultimately, we can't really count on anyone to come to rescue us, not even the Democrats. As much as I voted for Democrats, I definitely don't see them as coming to our rescue because it really makes me think of what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said about white liberals being too dedicated to order, and they're dedicated to this like negative piece where they just don't want tension. They just don't want drama. They just want to go about their day. But in reality, the status quo kills Black people. So we need to use this moment to actually fight for permanent changes, whether it's the pathway to citizenship, which years ago Democrats used to be in support of Dreamers, they used to be in support of pathway citizenship. That was something I was proud of. Now I can't really say that they 100% are. I could say that the Democrats are
Right.
very mixed on a lot of human rights and justice, mixed on police brutality, mixed on what happens to migrants, mixed on what happens to the environment. Like they're simply have been unable to find the voice in the downfall of like in Kamala's loss, right? There's people that kind of don't seem to know how to move forward. I see a lot of people kind of saying, I told you so. And I don't see
Yeah.
really people taking a lead on, okay, how do we go from here? Because we're not going to just get a fresh set of people. The people we have are the people that we're going to have next time. So what do we do differently, right?
Right. And to touch on what you said about, nobody's coming to save us. No matter what Democrats try to do right now, right? Everything takes forever. So on the
Right.
street level, we're on our own. We're on our own. You know, it took till today before DC was able to get into court to try to challenge Trump's takeover of the police department. It's been days, right? So,
Right.
people on the street suffered for those days. And essentially, I don't know, I think I saw something about the DC police is going to acquiesce Trump and then participate in immigration raids or something. I don't know. I don't know for sure about that. That was just happening when we came on. But yeah, the way it's the way things are happening. It's not okay. So yeah, this always happens to Black people. It always happens to Latinos too, right? We're right. Latinos are right behind Black people on being killed by police.
Right.
Um, and our communities are militarized. Sometimes our communities and your communities are the same community. We have those in Houston
Mhm.
where, they're largely Latino and largely Black. And,
That's how my
we have to
community is.
share.
My community has a very good mix. We don't have any white people live in our community, but we do have some Latinos. It's Black and Latino.
Right. There's a lot of communities here in Houston that are like that where there's, maybe one or two white people and then the rest are just Black people and Latinos. So, when cops are occupying communities, they're occupying the communities,
Mhm.
Um, and I was having this discussion with I can't remember who on here today in the comments of one of my posts, and we were talking about do white people literally think they're immune to fascism?
I think they're
And
not
when
gonna wanna react until they're at their door.
right, well, you see, the thing
It's gonna be
is
too late. It's gonna be too late.
in all of this, right? Because you have to take if you took everything Trump is doing in its totality and
Right.
targeting Medicaid and food stamps is going to disproportionately impact poor white people.
That's right.
I'm not so sure they're aware of that.
They about to
But that's
find
all
out, just
part of
like what
this.
Obama said. They're about to find out.
Right. Right. And that's all part
Just
of
like that
this.
graph showed. Just like the graph.
Yeah, it's about control and it's about making people submit. And, at some point they're already targeting, homeless people on the street, these rural communities, these guys with tons of guns bragging about it, these militia, far right militia, anti government militia. Do they really think that this federal overreach and federalizing our local cops isn't going to come for them? Because it will.
I
It
think they're
will.
very naive, but
Yeah.
in all, if they think they're not coming for them, they're definitely coming for poor white people. Because one thing I noticed, and I posted this on Twitter, I reshared this post where this white man who was the far right Republican, he was talking about potentially them bulldozing entire parts of Washington
Yeah.
D.C. And my mom's traveled to DC a lot for work, and one thing she's always told me is, don't believe the hype. Washington D.C. is a predominantly black city, just like New Orleans. And she was even telling me, just like how they called us Chocolate City, lots of people call them Chocolate City. And so when you talk about bulldozing communities in Washington D.C., let's be clear, they're not
Right.
talking about white
Right.
affluent communities. They're talking about
Right.
black communities, and that is ethnic cleansing, you know,
Right,
and
and in that particular instance, and I don't mean to cut you off, he wasn't even talking about Latino communities. He was
right, he was
specifically
actually
like, he
talking
didn't.
about ethnic cleansing black
Right,
communities in Washington, D.C. and
right,
other big cities. So let me tell y'all, because this is coming up, this is the month of the 20-year anniversary for Katrina. Let me tell you what happens
man.
when you're displaced. So we had public housing that tens of thousands of people lived in before the storm. And what they did was after the storm, they tore it down. And everyone was like, okay, great, they're going to build new housing, right? What they did was they built housing that was too expensive for those people to move back into, thereby displacing thousands of people. And if you talk to most people in New Orleans today, we have to constantly drive back and forth between here and Houston because so much of our family is still displaced. It really was a fight to come back home. And when I did get job coming back home, a lot of times you'd see more kind of like white people from out of town that came down after the storm to buy property and just displace black people. So it's like we're fighting to kind of maintain our cities and stuff. So a lot of the displacement that other people are about to experience is displacement we already have. So definitely pay attention to these documentaries that are coming out. One of them's by Ryan Coogler. Another one that's new is about to come out in a couple of days from Spike Lee. Um, I had some family and friends that were on the documentary, so it was a hard watch
Wow.
because different fun members of my family and friends would just like crash out, start crying and stuff. And I kinda didn't wanna watch it for that very reason, but it's like you come home and they're just watching it, and you're like, "Oh, why are you doing this? Why do we have to open this can of pain?" But it's like it's about to happen anyway because the entire world is gonna talk about it. So in a way, we're kinda, like, inoculating ourselves by just getting ahead of it, you know?
Yeah, it just you reminded me of, like, there's so many things that are coming back because of this 20-year anniversary, and, I came in afterwards, right? We did restoration and recovery work there. But
Right.
one of the toughest things from a business perspective was keeping people there working because it was so bad, and, like, just hearing these stories right, like, hearing the stories constantly, a lot of the guys were just like, "Dude, I can't. I can't.
There's,
This is
like,
just too bad."
there's dead bodies in the so there's, like, dead bodies in a lot of the houses, but there wasn't enough people to go in the houses and check, so a
Yeah.
lot of the houses for like, let's say 5, 6 years later, they would have the X on the building, and they have the number of people that they found in there or bodies or anything like that when they did do the assessment. The house I'm in actually flooded. The water was way above my head, and my boyfriend's uncle had to go in the roof and just hope that the water stopped rising so they didn't drown. And it just was a horrible experience for everybody. We lost everything. And even though 20 years have passed, like that was when I was a senior in high school. So like my whole class, like we'll never get over that because that was our coming of age story was, okay,
Yeah.
now you're an adult because we don't have time for you to be a kid anymore. We have nothing. You don't have any clothes on your back, shoes, nothing. So now it's like I know that Trump wants to get rid of FEMA altogether. And my mom does disaster relief work. So it's just sad because even though FEMA did a really bad job and Michael Brown was a racist asshole, that was who that was over FEMA at the time. And like George Bush, everyone did a bad job, right? But at least we did have relief. It was slow relief, it was ineffective, but we had something. I can't imagine going through Katrina and there being no such thing as FEMA.
Yeah.
A lot of people I knew, they gave us a trailer by your house so that you could live by your house while you got your house fixed. And sometimes that took a year or 2 or 3 years to get your house fixed. So if you couldn't get a trailer, then you couldn't come back. So everything was tied to FEMA. And they also gave, if you were over the age 18, and it sucks for me because I was 17, but a lot of my peers, you get $1,800 for an apart to go towards an apartment afterwards. Red Cross gave us money, but FEMA really came through in the end. It's just when people were like heads up, dead in water, they didn't help. But maybe like a month or two later, they helped. And so we just wanted FEMA to be better. And now he thinks that FEMA shouldn't exist. But I'm here to tell you that that's a really dangerous. And you live in the South, you live in Texas, and you know about Florida. Um, you know what it's like down here without FEMA. That's just not feasible to me, you know?
No, it isn't, and, it's scary because despite all the failures from FEMA, like, at the time and that was right after they put FEMA under DHS control, so that was a disaster in itself because
Yeah.
we were part of that transition, and after DHS compared to before was a freaking nightmare, and it still is. The thing is when something like that happens, there's a ton of funding that gets triggered immediately to try to restore power grids, communication systems. We were the communication system guys, right? So we have to wait for
Right.
power. And like money was immediately there. Like they were calling us within 24 hours
Right.
and then we got hung up by Hurricane Rita on our way on I-10. There's a hurricane coming into Houston right after, 2 days later, a few days later,
Right.
and we got stuck, but but we were, we got in there, we got in a good time, and we started, getting things working relatively fast. But I remember them sending us multiple times. And one of the last times I went into the lower ninth to do a survey, and the survey is to try, are they ready for us to come in after the power company? And we're talking like 6, 7 months later, power lines are still on the ground. So that's a no go for us, right? We have to
Right.
wait. But I remember driving through there, and I still have the pictures, and I still don't look at them because they're really triggering. Because I knew that in some of those houses, there were still people in there months later. And I remember driving through there cussing in the back of my mind because they were talking about doing Mardi Gras. And I'm like, I'm
That's
not
all they
from
cared about.
Louisiana, but
That's all
I
they cared
thought it
about.
was
It was
I thought it was
irreplaceable.
just very, I thought it was. And I got it. I understood the argument and all that, but like it really broke my heart. And like,
Well, that shows you how messed up capitalism is. That even
right,
while we lost over 1,400 people were killed in the storm, but yet y'all want us to come out and shake our rumps and attract tourists to come to the city for entertainment purposes. And honestly, I was actually thinking about buying a house in the Ninth Ward. You'd be surprised, even though 20 years later, last year, at the end of last year, me and my boyfriend were looking at certain housing areas because we stay in the Seventh Ward. So it's only like a 10-minute drive to get to the Ninth Ward.
right,
And they have a lot of decent priced property. The same reason the area was attractive to a lot of black people at the end of slavery is the same reason why it's attractive now. Obviously it could flood, but the house I'm in now floods. My plan is I could see the interstate. My plan is to get up on the interstate and don't go towards the West Bank because see, that's the thing that people like outsiders don't understand. And you've been down here, so you kind of get it. Orleans, outside of Orleans Parish, everything changes. It changes like Union versus Confederacy style changes. So in my community in Algiers, where my mom and all of us were living at the time, the people that tried to escape, because on the radio they said we could go to the ferry and you would get federal resources. Well, they had a group of white people that were saying, and they literally had this in federal documents, I will shoot anyone that's darker than a brown paper bag that comes in the area. But if you know how Algiers is shaped, you have to cross the river to get to the rest of New Orleans. It's the only part of New Orleans that's on the west bank of the river and it's considered Orleans Parish. And so you have to pass through white people to get to the resources. And think of it like this, they had no way of knowing that the white people had an intention to shoot them if they went that way.
right,
The other way was the interstate, and the other way is where white people were shooting white people on the interstate when they tried to cross the Jefferson Parish. So if you try to go to the rest of New Orleans, they're going to shoot you. If you try to leave the parish, they're going to shoot you. And there's nothing open, no electricity, no food, no water, nothing. So people were desperate and people were just risking getting shot by white people to get resources and stuff. So even though that part of the of New Orleans didn't flood, all of the roofs came off of the houses to where you could literally on the interstate see the inside of people's houses. And FEMA is who paid to put blue roofs. We call it blue roofs, but if you saw it, blue they put
yeah,
that blue stuff on everybody's roof to cover it up so that your house just will stop getting rained in eventually. So everything was just ruined, and it was a lot of killings and a lot of construction workers would end up dead in houses. They'd get robbed because they were making cash daily. And so a lot of times they would end up dead in houses. It was just our crime lab was down for years. So we didn't have like we couldn't they couldn't send fingerprinting and blood work and all this type of stuff. So a lot of murders went unsolved. Some of the inmates died because
yeah,
they're so crazy. Rather than to let them go out of the jail, they're like, "Oh, the water's rising, but you're still in jail though, so just drowned, I guess. Whatever
right,
works."
right,
So what migrants are going through with alligator Alcatraz, black people, we've been through that, and I always knew that we were gonna have to fight together against this if we're gonna make it because the
yeah,
separatism that I see, especially on Twitter with some of those weird cults, um, I just am so anti the cults that hate immigrants. I'm like, y'all are insane. Y'all are parroting white supremacist talking points word for word.
right,
And in fact, And there's one guy that comes to one of my spaces. I'm actually planning on calling him out on Sunday because I actually have receipts. That's what he don't know. So basically, he pretends to be someone else. He's not in the space that people have been telling me he's being hateful. And I saw something that he literally said. I don't know if he's joking or not, but I don't care. He was talking about wanting to join ICE, talking about join ICE and get the immigrants and stuff. So to me, I'm like, okay, so now I know who you are. Don't come because you are going to get embarrassed in front of people because I have no choice because we have to like espouse you people from us because it's
Yeah.
unfortunate, right? And the policies we support would help them too. But can they say the same thing? No, they
Right.
can't.
Right. Right. No, I
So
agree with you
I'm
there
just
too.
okay.
The 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 stuff and it's wild because there's a lot of similarities with the whole Katrina conversation and what we're doing now because from my end, like when it came time to find guys, contractors to go to work there, they were coming from everywhere. I had dudes from Wisconsin, I had dudes from Illinois, I mean
Right.
California, everywhere. And it was easy. When we rolled in there, we were 40 trucks deep because there were so many guys who came to Houston. And
Right.
it was cool.
I
And like
love how
you,
people
you
came
s-
together to try to rebuild the city.
right. Because the way to get out of that situation, there was a lot of unity from different angles. And like, we did a lot of the work in those places outside of New Orleans, right? And
Right.
where you're talking about. And, we did some work in like some soggy, swampy
I'm scared
shit, but
already.
and
I
there's
can feel the Confederate flags. I can feel it.
right, right. And
Oh my God.
but
That
like
gives me bad anxiety.
and it's like right, and it's like, those people were wild because some of them were pretty, racist, but like it was a lot like in Appalachia where like a lot of people in Appalachia like very anti-racist and anti-bigotry and anti that stuff. And like there was this one old dude, man, we came up on his shack. He come out with a shotgun, who the hell's on my property type situation, but
Right.
he was super cool and like he had just made this giant pot of cabbage with ham in it for breakfast.
That's
And
Louisiana people
he
for you. I bet you it had all the
right.
salt and seasoning you could ever ask for.
And he gave it to us so we could take it back to the camp and feed our crew because we were in a bunch of FEMA trailers too. And
He sounds Cajun.
right, right.
Cajun
Yeah, like man, we couldn't
Cajuns are not exactly like normal white people. Like they're something else. A lot of them come from like their family. A lot of them came down from Canada. A lot of them are like from Canada, and then they came down here and resettled here. And some of them are like swamp people that kind of never
yeah,
did the whole flavor thing. And then some of them are, but you could kind of tell like when you're talking about making the ham and cabbage and stuff, that's kind of to me giving Cajun vibe. A lot of them are
yeah,
really
like
nice and they'll give you stuff. Like they'll give you food and
yeah.
stuff.
We had to come back the next day and we brought him all his stuff, but like, we're up there climbing the telephone poles and like he's down there and he's says something, right? We don't really understand
Right.
what it was, but the way he started laughing at us, right? The way he started laughing at us, we had to start laughing too. We're like, whatever the hell that was, it must have been really funny. And
Right.
so, I think like it'd be cool to see moments like that, but I don't know that we're there yet right now. I think those days are ahead of us. I think we can't like I'm optimistic in that way, in that I believe in like my community. I believe in the black community. I believe in a lot of people, in their humanity coming through in the end. Um,
Right.
I think that right now, you have a lot of people, the diehard MAGA, that are all going off and salivating about these ICE raids and this blurring the lines between state and federal authority. But, when you look at the polling, aside from them, everybody else is against this. Like everybody
Right.
else is like, "Oh shit, we were wrong about immigration. We got duped." And like, we have to address the fact that words have power, right? So
Right.
when somebody like Donald Trump or Stephen Miller and all these guys are on the news and they're constantly saying migrant criminal aliens over and over and over
Mhm.
again, it
Propaganda.
becomes
That's propaganda.
right. And like even mainstream legacy media in their news reports bought it. You saw liberal people on we I think we've talked about this on cable news bought it where, they were talking about, yeah, we got to get rid of the criminal aliens, but they never defined what a criminal immigrant is. And so now here we are, right? Where they can just make one a criminal. They walk into court, I'm going to throw your case out. Now you no longer have legal protections in this country. They're going to treat you like a criminal and lock you
Well,
up
same way
or
they
just send
did
you
with
somewhere.
black people. The same way that they
Right.
take away your free papers. And once they take away your free papers, just like they did Solomon Northup, they're like, oh, free? You were never free. What are you talking about? Like, and then
Right.
so
And
I'm really conscious of what it is to take away someone's status. And I think in the Constitution, we talked about the fact that it says if you're a person, and it
right.
seems like Republicans don't believe in personhood. They only believe in
Right.
citizenship. And that's dangerous because where you're born should not determine your humanity. Like, let's not take things,
Right.
like I get it that, people want, I mean, I guess I'm only a nationalist in the sense that I care about black people in this nation. I'm not a nationalist in the sense that I'm dedicated to America because America does some really foul things. And we should be able to call that out because that's how we maintain our integrity. But I did want to say
Yeah.
I wanted people to stop complying in advance. To me, there's a
Right.
big movement to try to say, you know what? I know this is coming up. I know Donald Trump doesn't like this. So let me cater what I'm doing in my programs and my community stuff to kind of not raise any brows. What's going on at the Smithsonian should dissuade anybody from that route because essentially he
Yeah.
wants to change the museum, the African American History Museum. He wants to change it to reflect his attitude towards history. That's not the way
Right.
history works. History is the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's all the things. And just trying to cherry pick, well, you're a Nazi. Donald Trump is operating like a Nazi, and a Nazi operates like a Confederate. So it's all the same. These bigots have to get taken out of power first and foremost. And so I'm really interested in coalition building because I feel like a lot of people that are in a lot of the bad online spaces that I see on Twitter, they don't seem like they truly want any change. Shuri, be good. Come here. She hears a noise and she wants to tear somebody up. Be good. Don't eat them. Don't eat
Yeah.
the people. But yeah, I think that there's like a lot of emphasis on trying to separate people, and we have to fight against that. It's not good enough to just say, I'm not a part of that hateful group. I feel like that's not good enough. Like, what are you doing to try to mend fences or to try to make sure the different marginalized groups can fit into your movement? Like, with us, writers and editors of color, we could have just said black writers and editors. You know what I mean? But we did writers and editors of
Right.
color because we wanted to leave the door open to other people of color who wanted to collaborate and work with us. And it worked. I mean, you're Cuban, you're in our group, I'm Black American, I'm in the group. We have people that are Asian. We've had Palestinian people in the group. We've had people from all over the world. So it's just kind of
Yeah.
like we need that type of organization where no matter what you independently do, you need to be able to bring it to other people and try to foster a way
Right.
forward, you know?
Yeah, a lot because I'm a firm believer, like I'm one of the, everything's connected kind of situation. And especially when it comes to this to white supremacy. Like, when we're talking about well, like when you mentioned that some of the things they're doing to Latinos right now is, what they did to black people, you know, slavery, post-slavery, Jim Crow, all that stuff. I want to be clear with some people, like, in no way are we trying to equate this to slavery at all,
Right,
because it's not. But
right.
what is true is that the systems that were used against black people,
Bingo.
against indigenous people,
Mhm.
were later used against Germans, then against Irish, then against the Chinese with the
Italian.
Chinese, right? And then then you have the Jim Crow era, and like everything about race issues was black and white then, right? So like that's where the whole didn't know where to put Latinos,
Right.
so there was all these cases about Latinos are white, and then they tried to say no, they're not, but they're not black. So
Right.
there was all this. There was a bit of chaos socially at the time, trying to figure that out. So some of the same systems though, and the rhetoric. You go back and I mention Benjamin Franklin often because I think this is where honestly the modern day xenophobic language came from, where he was worried about the Germanization of Pennsylvania. He was complaining that they didn't assimilate, that they were congregating in their own neighborhoods that were all German speaking, and that they needed to spread them out and
Of
essentially water
course.
down their vote, right, and water down their vote so they can maintain a white society. So it was like essentially the first racial
Gerrymander.
gerrymandering, right?
But in
And it,
Louisiana, they were concerned because we're very French. They were concerned about the
right,
Americanization here, and they also didn't want French white people from Haiti to come here either. They were very particular in the type of white people they wanted. So if anything, you're right. Those type of ideas have been here since its inception, where white supremacy just it's naturally a selfish ideology that says
right,
this is for me and people that look like me and no one else. And so it's about exclusivity, just like the whites only town um, is that in Arkansas that they founded that they're trying to
right.
go to Missouri with.
Yeah, and there are neighborhoods here that are like that too. They're not explicitly all white,
Right.
but like
But
they
you could
price them
tell.
a certain way. They put
That's what
them in
I be
certain
trying to tell people.
places.
They make it so high they know they won't have to see black
Right,
faces.
right, right. And
Like,
so yeah,
mhm.
even even when you go back to like the Chinese Exclusion Act, right? There was all the rhetoric at the time was they're driving up our housing costs. They're taking all our jobs. But at the time,
Right.
the Chinese were doing all the jobs Latinos do now, right? Because
Bingo.
white people
Don't
were
want to do
never
it.
it
They're gonna force
right,
someone else to do the
right.
work. They're never gonna do the work.
Now,
That's why it's so funny when they're so I when I looked it up, I found out that 40% of farm workers in the United States are undocumented. So I thought to myself, I don't have to be an economist to find out what would happen to our food supply if let's say they're
right,
successful. Let's say every single undocumented immigrant is gone, then that means either one or two things are gonna happen. They're going to have to basically incarcerate a lot of more people and force them to tend the fields, like a significantly higher proportion have and are going to have to be kind of re-enslaved, or white people are going to do it. And I just can't see white people getting out into the fields and doing any work because historically, when they've done that, and that's not to say throughout all of history, but ever since the Dark Ages, they coming out of this, they have not been able to successfully cultivate
right.
without exploiting others, with the exception of maybe the Irish. And even they were exploited. So the very few white people who are hardworking, well, guess who's coming for your? Guess who's coming? Guess who's coming? The lazy white people. And I hate to say it like that, but you are lazy if you literally want to slave. Like if you literally
Yeah,
want to slave, you're lazy.
right. And it's not to say there aren't white farmers out there. There's a white farmer here and there. I know a few, right? But when
Right.
it came to industrial farming, it comes to industrial farming, ain't no white people doing this.
They're not willing
Never.
to do it. They're not willing to do
Right.
it to the extent that it's gonna feed a population. And see, that's the problem. It's like, yeah, y'all are willing to farm a little bit, especially now that you got your little $1 million equipment. Now that it just costs money, now poor white farmers, yeah, you've been through some things, but not because you were white. Black farmers have been through so much. In fact, they've lost over 92% of their land.
Right. That's
So
where I
it's
was
like,
going. Yeah.
and my grandfather was a sugar sharecropper, and his dad was born a slave, and so we don't own a lot of property in St. Martinville where he was harvesting all that sugar cane. He has
Right.
one house that he built from the ground up that some family members still live in. But that's it. Like there was no reward from creating all this. And a lot of people don't realize during slavery, Louisiana was producing a fourth of the world's sugar. Look how small we are. Now think about all that work, that back-breaking work that had to be done so that white people could be rich, so that the state could be wealthy. And so I feel like a lot of people they think that, oh, black people want a handout. No, we want a fair opportunity, and that's something that has never been given to us.
Yeah,
And I would say
when
that,
you
you know,
right,
no,
and like
go
when you consider that every industry here, like because of the stock market, which was created with money from slavery,
ahead.
everything like everybody says, oh, immigrants built this country. It
I
irks
hate
me
that.
because kinda because
You
but
say
the only
and.
reason
If they say
right
and, it works.
the like right, but they built it because the money from slavery was
You were
available to
only
pay
able
them.
you were only able
Right,
to come to this country and find and be able to start a business and do all those things
right,
because we made it a prosperous place. Our enslavement made it a
right,
prosperous engagement. So, like, think for example, when we watch the movie Sinner and you look at the Chinese immigrant family who was able to start a store, notice no black people in the entire community had enough money to get a store. No one. It wouldn't be
right,
allowed. But yet, because black people made it a prosperous area where they have these farms that are producing all these goods, and therefore there's a need for a store, and they're allowed to engage in the banking system in the way that black people were deprived. And then they're like, well, we started from nothing. Black people started from less than nothing. And that's the part people
right,
don't get. It's not that we didn't start from nothing. If you started from nothing, congrats to you. We started off, even though we were enslaved, we started off like in debt because when my grandfather was a sharecropper, it's like the way it works is it's like you owe them just for living and you have to
right,
pay everything. And at first, for the first part of his life, they didn't pay him in dollars, they paid him in store credit. So they pay you in a type of money that you can only buy at the local store that the planter owns. So you can't save up and escape. And the only reason he
right.
was able to have a house is because he became a carpenter. He literally had to learn to create a house and teach his sons to create houses in order to have a house. I don't know. It pisses me off
Yeah,
because
it's
I feel like people have to see the link between history and now. Like,
yeah, and when you mentioned that just now, about the sharecropping thing, it makes me think of like a lot of these people that work in agriculture, and mind you, agriculture in this country includes the landscaping industry. So, like one of my first jobs, I worked for a landscape company, and the boss would go to Mexico, get these guys work visas, agricultural work visas, then bring them over when it was landscape season, mowing yard season, and he'd put them up in a trailer on some lot somewhere. There'd be like 10 of them in a trailer, and then he paid them minimum wage, but then he deducted what the visas cost out of their paycheck. So basically,
that's
when
what
they got here,
sharecroppers call. Yep.
right, they were already in debt when they got here, like 6 grand each. And a lot of dudes took off on him. They're like, shit, I'm here, fuck it, I'm out. And they
Oh yeah.
bail.
Yep.
And I'm like,
I would have been
why?
screaming too. I'd have been like, nope, 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 nope.
Yeah,
Bye bye.
yeah. And I look
You
at him,
know,
I'm like, what did you expect, dude? Like,
something bad like that happened to me. So when I was younger, and this is how I met the boyfriend I have now, is I had two guy roommates in college. Like they kept me safe. One of them I started dating, and he was black and Mexican, and his dad was Mexican. And so one time we got an offer to do this job in Chicago, and I'm like 19. I'm like, I want to go to Chicago, and they're like, it's a free apartment, we just want y'all to do maintenance for the apartment like it's a part of a crew. So we went out there and I was doing my part because I was in college and I also was helping take care of their kids. So it's like when they went to work, I would take care of the kids, stuff like that. And we all eat breakfast together. We all do everything together. And a lot of them were Mexican, obviously, because that's what his dad was. And so what was crazy is, so we were out there, we worked for a month, right? And I was even helping doing some of the work too, sometimes in the evening. Like they were having us painting the fences, like freshening up the color. We were doing stuff in the
right,
house, like we were doing sheetrock and stuff like that. Like we were like, say somebody rented an apartment, we would go in there first and make sure everything is Gucci, fresh paint, fresh everything, ready to go. And we did that for about a month. And when I tell you this man did not want to pay us, I was so traumatized, and I talked to him. I said, "Does he understand that we're Americans? Does he understand he can't just?" And he said, unfortunately, I don't think he thinks we are American. I think he takes one look at me, and he might think you Dominican or whatever you are, but he does not think
Yeah,
we're American. And even his dad, I'm calling him Mexican, but he's a Mexican American. You get what I'm saying? It's like all of us have
yeah.
every right to be here, and you can't. We could go to the labor department. So, but instead of that, we just did it the hood way, where he told them, "Listen, it's gonna be a problem for you and your family if you don't give me a check and meet me at the gas station. Then you don't never have to see us again. But what you are gonna do is give us a large sum of what you owe, and we're about to go back down south." And so that's what we did. But even though I'm an American, I know what it's like to literally work and like somebody be like, "I'm not paying you." Like I was looking around like, who is he talking to? He talk about
Yeah,
we're not gonna get paid. Like,
right, and that happens
no,
to a lot of undocumented migrants, like, that are,
yeah.
like, working in
They
trades.
lie. They lie and say,
Right, and,
"Thank
like
you, thank you. Come on, come on, come on."
right. Yeah, no, and the builder will, like, if you're working for a builder, or, like, maybe you're a subcontractor for a paint company or a sheetrock company, like, you see it all the time where they go to collect and the white dude's like, "Fuck you," and drives off and doesn't pay them, thinking they don't have any
Unfortunately.
recourse, and obviously they don't know that they do have recourse, and
Right.
it takes forever, but they eventually get their money, and it is a crime to do that, so
It really is a
it's
crime.
still right, and it's crazy that white dudes think they can do that.
They did that. We were
And
literally because I'm like, we're literally over 1,000 miles away from home. We got kids. It's the winter. That was it. Literally, that was the only time in my life where I had to get food
no
stamps.
way, dude.
And I ended up getting emergency food stamps because I explained to them what happened and they gave it to me. And I had to learn to kind of cook more things. I was like, look, I'm gonna have to start using these skills my mom and my grandma gave me because we we need every dollar we have and stuff like that. I was so happy to go back to come back home. To come back home, I said, I had to tell my mom, I said, "Mom, they didn't think I was American." I said, I didn't know what to do. But then one time in Louisiana, somebody did that to us. It was a group of black people, and a black person did it to us. Literally, he hired us. He had an office on Poitiers Street, which is like downtown. We thought, oh my God, this guy's got all this money. He hired us at the end of the 2 weeks. He was like, "Yeah, y'all gonna have to like start a sales team and sell this many models CDs to get paid." And we're like, "Well, wait, what about the 2 weeks, the 40 hours that we work?" And he was like, "Well, actually, we're about to leave town and stuff like that." And some of the other people, because this New Orleans, some of the other people around me was like, "We not letting them leave town." Oh God, I know that boy so was about to
Right.
get stuck. So, but once again, we had to take less. All of us got like $200, and then he just got away. And it's like, so I really hate. I don't like. That's the worst feeling ever is
That's
when you work
crazy.
really hard and in the end somebody's just like, haha, I'm not thank you.
Yeah,
It,
right.
it makes it so hard not to engage in violence because it's like, oh my goodness, I was trying to be a good person and this MF said they didn't want to pay me. And so when I see what's happening to migrants, like to me, it's like, no, that's not my permanent life, but I do know what it's like to be treated that way. And it is scary and it's
Yeah.
sad. And, and yeah, I just have all the type of empathy in the world for that situation because,
Yeah, like,
that, and honestly, Donald Trump has done that to people too. Donald Trump has started construction bids and people and contractors have said they have not gotten paid. So that's letting you
yeah.
know that if those individuals got paid, the contractors had to come out their money because Donald Trump, the typical scam artist that he is, would not pay.
Yeah, like, we never collected our final 3 invoices from our work after Katrina, and, like, I paid out, like, close to 300 grand in payroll and never collected a check and went broke, like, almost overnight. It was crazy. Yeah, like, that's the worst feeling in the world because, like, you know, like, for us, like, we lost everything, and it was like, little by little, it's just all going away, and it's really scary. It's like, yeah, I don't but yeah, so Yeah, brain fart.
Oh,
So
that's
yeah, we're
okay. I think we could do we could give closing arguments of what we think. And also I want people to know that are listening to, first of all, we didn't talk to y'all that much, so sorry about that. The way that Substack is set up, I'm still getting the hang of it because if it was on my
yeah,
computer, it would be easier for me to read what the comments are. But I'll just go through really quick just to see nobody told us anything. And then also we want people to know that me and him have actually decided to do this once a week. Now we'll have to find
yeah,
out if next week it's going to be the same time on Friday, but you could definitely expect to hear from the editor of Culture and the editor of Antagonist more often. I think somebody said something about, oh yeah, propaganda to achieve their fascist objective. You definitely agree, Noel. Um, and the part that depresses me is seeing people of color join ICE. Absolutely, yeah, that was disgusting.
yeah,
Um, that was
yeah.
sickening.
That's terrible.
We deserve better. Now I see this one from Noel. I definitely feel the urgency. I'm white and I'm frustrated with white friends who are still tuning it out like it won't impact them. Aside from the fact that it's horrifying, what are they doing to other communities? How can we not feel the horror of this, right? It kind of reminds me of like when we talk about we're kind of very judgmental of the Germans during World War II, and we're like, oh look, they're just trash people. Like we try to dismiss it. But what's happening here in America really lets us know that that could happen to any group of people. It's all about complacency. The FEMA cuts
Yeah,
will hit the area hard too. They say.
I think like a lot when it comes to how white people are very dismissive about things, I think that's a very big issue in this country, and it revolves around the lack of confrontation, I think, right? So,
Right.
you know, when you see black people saying some xenophobe, you check people in your community. I check
Bingo.
people in my community, particularly the Cuban community, because
Right.
there's a lot of racism there.
Mhm.
So, and I check them all the time. I think that one of the things that we see on social media that's emblematic of most of US society is when, for example, there was all this talk about Nazis being on Substack. Okay, it sucks, right? But don't ask me to leave, right? This is my
Bingo.
livelihood, right? This is my
Bingo. They,
livelihood.
they're not running us off nothing.
Right,
Period.
and then the thing is, everybody is automatically like, "Oh, no, there's Nazis on Substack, we must go." And that's the problem. That
They
people have
exist
got to
whether you
stop.
want to be on the same social network as them or not.
Right, so
You know.
and that's the thing, I think that
Are
that's
you
the
gonna
thing with
concede?
overall.
They're continuing to concede ground to them.
Right, and that's the situation with overall with society for several decades, because I remember when I was a teenager and it was a skinheads against racial prejudice in New York and getting in trouble and all the times I sat in a jail here in Texas because dueling's legal, right? So if both parties are willing participant, they'll throw you in a drunk tank and let you out 8 hours later, no charges. Anyway, during all that, it's just shit. I lost my train of thought again.
That's okay.
Um, no, but I'm having a bad time right now. So yeah, like that. So that's the thing. Running from Nazis. In the '80s when I was younger, and the '90s and all that, we were often told, ignore them, don't give them space, let them do their thing, don't pay attention to them. But when you were running around on the streets at night, like we were as teenagers in New York City, and you see what these Nazis do at night, and they're beating, Asian people in the alleyway or jumping a gay kid in Washington Square Park or something like that. You can't just ignore that. It's
Right.
easy to
Not.
turn, oh, it's just a Nazi, but right. So like you see it now and like you go over to Blue Sky and everybody's over there is bashing on Substack Nazis this, Eric Andreessen or whoever, who's a fascist, put money into Substack. The dude is a hedge fund investor guy. He's gonna invest in products that are popular. That's
Right.
what
He's
they do.
capitalist. I mean, that's what they do.
Right, right. That's
We're so naive
capitalism.
because the person who started Blue Sky, when I read the article, they said that they did not guarantee that they would not do ads in the future, and they did not guarantee that
Yeah.
they wouldn't monetize in the future. So in what way? It's like you're running from something, but everything is going to become that. you know? So you just
Right,
have to
and
kind of
the same.
find your space.
Right, and like from a Mark Zuckerberg perspective, like he's not going to ban far right thought and Nazis because that's money, that's income, that's a
Right.
market. To them, it's a market segment. It's a thing. They don't give a
Right.
shit about the impact.
The
They care about the
consequences.
money.
Bingo.
Right. So, it's the same with Substack. It's the same with basically everything we use.
They're all
I didn't
tools. It's
abandon.
about how we use it, you know?
Right, like, I didn't abandon Twitter because I'm not gonna cede space to Nazis, I'm just not.
Definitely.
You want you know what I mean? It's not I'm not gonna run from you, and that's all there is to it. So, Substack has become home to me because of the tools it offers.
Wow.
Talking to readers, communicating, and like having chats and notes and all that stuff is just so useful because people can ask you
Yeah.
questions and they might drive a story a certain way with a certain question, and it's really cool because it's beneficial for everybody as a community.
It
So
is.
coming back around to what we can do in this moment and coming together, that's why I think Substack could be useful for writers, journalists, editors. I mean, in our community, we have poets and rappers, and all of them have this met right. So, like, all of that could be hugely beneficial here too. Um, so I think for us, to bring woke back together, I think we should probably try to build maybe around Substack, see if we can find more of us here. Um, I think, I think we talked about this before we went live, probably going to streamline decolonized journalism and Antagonist Mag, probably all into Antagonist Mag, and, and just go with that.
When my phone buzzed, because it had just fell.
uh, so, so yeah, I might streamline some things and then, try to build Antagonist Mag more on Substack to try to bring more writers, give them more voice, give them more exposure,
Wow. That makes
things like
sense.
that.
And I'm trying to see if I want to officially like I don't want to do too much mirroring. I like the idea that
Right,
I don't know. I think I'm just gonna stay. I'm gonna stay just as me. And a part of me wants to do the culture thing, but see, Walter Reed already helps me so much with that as it is.
right,
I don't want to
right.
make more work for him because, like, if I ever get money, he's like on the list of people to where I'm like, I'm gonna break him off. I'm gonna be like, go to
Yeah,
your tips are going
yeah,
because he's been supportive every step of the way. Ever since I only had like 4 or 5 followers on Medium, he was just supportive and he's nice
yeah,
to writers. So
yeah. He's helped me out a lot on Medium too. He's helped me out a lot on Medium.
yeah, but I
So
don't know. It's
yeah,
lots of people I love, but yeah. So I guess my closing thing would be, um, organize with like-minded people.
yeah,
Do not comply in advance. And the biggest scam is that we're powerless because when we combine our power, we actually are powerful. And we do have what it takes to overcome the things that we're going through, but it is going to require unity, right? And so that means when we see people that are not just trying to point out wrong, because as Arturo and me discussed, we're willing to hold members of our communities, our respective communities, accountable when they cross the line. When Black people engage in xenophobia, when Latino people engage in anti-Blackness, but ultimately, what we're not going to do is allow the people that want to divide us to succeed in that effort. Because
right,
we know that we're strong together. And Latinos are going to be in the majority in this country. Hey, hey, feel that.
right.
Feel that. White people feel that. And so, I mean, I'd love to continue to work with the majority.
No kidding.
I want to continue to work with the future majority so that we can work on the future of our nation. And don't worry, when Black people and Latino people thrive, everyone will. So that's something to keep in mind is we're not in a swivel chair. I do have a swivel chair, but we're not in an evil
Right,
swivel chair plotting for people to be harmed. We want a better society for everyone, but that starts by taking care of the most marginalized, the Black people, the immigrants who are facing persecution right now domestically. Okay, so thank you so much for coming, and I want to give Arturo the final words today.
no, I'm with you on that. Especially organizing with like-minded people. Because that's what we did at Woke, and That's what we're gonna keep doing moving forward. So I hope that the conversation is, triggers some thought. Maybe we'll hear from some of our cohort. Maybe some readers will give us some ideas, when we post the video, as a newsletter post, and that's kind of what it's about, right? Kind of go gonzo on it and just hear from people and talk to people and see where they'd like to see us go, because I would love to build something, a collective like Mehdi Hassan did. Um,
Right,
some
like we have to pick a name, but I mean, ultimately, I wouldn't mind just writing. I write with your pub when it comes to here. Like, it doesn't have to be something new. You have a really good
right.
magazine that kind of makes space for a lot of our different writings. I really don't care where we do it, but I do like the idea of us trying to do something like where all of us publishes like once a month on it, or something like that people can depend on, like a crew, like a real solid crew of writers that's willing to commit to a certain project. I mean, we could create something new, but like I said, I like the antagonist. I like what you've done with the publication, so it's up to you.
Yeah, and I think, bringing more people in is just going to help build on that, because like I don't want to be like the owner of it, you know what I mean? I want that
Right.
to be like, me, I'm
Yeah.
socialist, so
Yeah.
share
Same.
with everybody.
That's why
Right?
we get
So
along so well.
right, right. So like I don't want it to say, I don't want to say, it's mine or I'm this, I'm that. I'd like it to just be a
Right.
collective. And if at some point we
Right.
end up making a nonprofit out of it or something like that, great. But I think
Right.
for now we just need somewhere to start. And sometimes, the antagonist mag on the web works because it gets a lot of traffic, and it's mainly for people who don't wanna be on Medium or can't afford to be on Medium
Right.
or don't wanna sign up for another platform like Substack. So, I always treat Medium like it's a walled garden. I treat Substack the same way. As much as
Right.
both of those have grown, they're still kind of walled gardens. For me, the Antagonist mag is, like, out in the wild when it comes to the website
Right.
version of
People
it.
can really access
And
it.
the idea with it is to help drive traffic to the newsletter, get more paying subscribers, things like that. But there's also a donation platform where donations come through from time to time because somebody will like a story or something like that, and they don't have to commit to being a subscriber. So
Right.
there's a lot of things to weigh there, but that's all stuff we can figure out as we go, I think. But yeah, I think I'm gonna streamline the decolonized journalism over to Antagonist, make it smoother, just because it's a lot of work for me right now to try to
Like
manage them both.
I've been thinking about consolidating some of my projects too. I'm thinking about kind of keeping the woke pub almost like writers' bios and how to find us type thing, and then focusing on cultured. Cultured is really my little baby.
I
And
love it.
sometimes it does really well. Like I'll see, I will Walter be publishing, I'll be editing on there too. So sometimes I'll just see a story pop up and I'm like, oh, that was published in my mag. Awesome. I like that. And I don't know. So, but yeah, I'm looking
Yeah,
forward into working with you some more in the future. So, do you think Tuesday's a good day to do our woke like discussion about the Trump raids, or do you
yeah,
think Tuesday or Wednesday?
yeah, yeah.
And
My
I'll text
family's
you
out of
and we
town.
can.
My
Oh, okay,
family's
so
out of town
good.
for the week, so
Oh, we
I'm
got
pretty
you.
flexible.
We kidnap
I
you.
got the
Okay,
grandkids tonight, but
good. Well,
yeah.
I'll text you and we can talk about what time works on Tuesday. But you guys, if you're
Okay.
interested in seeing more of me and Arturo talk and hearing from more of our both members, because we're gonna go in there and extend the invitation to everyone. And you can see us Tuesday and just tune in with us for the time. But thank you so much for joining. I appreciate you guys, and drop me a line. I'm gonna be my messages and stuff like that. Appreciate you guys. Bye. Stay woke no matter what they say. Bye.
Yeah, stay woke.